Over 10,000 backers made it a triumphant return for this legendary brand.
Heavy metal was just sort of this thing that I had seen at newsstands. I knew it was a comic, but it was very high up on that top shelf. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be looking at this.
It's risk-taking, it's edgy, it's not holding back, and it's offering something different to what you're actually finding on the stands these days.
There's something persistent about heavy metal that no matter what it goes through, it always survives. Heavy metal is not necessarily where you start, it's where you should end up. Mo backers, mo problems, but I think we've got a good handle on it. I live, sleep, breathe, eat, and dream heavy metal.
Hello, everybody. Tyler James with ComixLaunch here. This past month, the Heavy Metal magazine relaunched with a massive launch over on Kickstarter. Heavy Metal, affectionately known as the world's greatest illustrated magazine of sci-fi, fantasy, horror. It relaunched with a brand new issue #1. Over 10,000 backers made it a triumphant return for this legendary brand. And I have some awesome creators who are a part of making this magic happen joining me on the podcast today. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them on. I'm joined today by executive editor of Heavy Metal, Dave Kelly. Dave brings more than a decade of comics publishing experience to the table, and I can't wait to connect him with all of you and get talking about this project. We're also joined by Chris Thompson, who's the editorial manager of this project. He brings an eclectic amount of experiences in the world of comics. He's an award-winning retailer, podcaster, publishing veteran, and brings a lot of experience to this project as well. So Chris, Dave, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Good to speak to you again. I'm sure we spoke back when I was in retail, and I think Scam #1 was out. So this is a long, long time ago, but now you're the king of Kickstarter, and I'm a long way, away from retail.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was, oh man, I think we tried to reach out to just about everybody for that one. And we did a billboard in Vegas and the whole threw out everything at the wall back at that issue 1 launch way back when. But
Chris, we didn't do any billboards. What were we thinking?
Yeah, it's a different time.
Yeah, you guys left money on the table, clearly. Yeah, well, it's great to connect with you again, Chris, in this cool context. So I guess where I want to start, and again, we'll pull it up and there'll be links to the project because this campaign wrapped, but you guys are taking advantage of the late pledges feature over on Kickstarter. And by my account, you're like getting close to an extra $40,000 raised in late pledges. So the hits just keep on coming for this one. But I would love to just kind of start maybe with you, Dave. What's your heavy metal origin story? What drew you to this brand, and how'd you get involved in this project?
Right. Oh, it goes back decades. Where do I even start? Well, there's actually a really easy place to start, and it's the town I grew up in, Topeka, Kansas. So going to the local comic shop there, it was called The Gatekeeper. It's still in existence, but it's got new owners these days. And at some point in the mid-90s, a trading card company put out some cards related to the Heavy Metal movie. And I got my hands on a couple packs of those. And I had no idea. Heavy Metal was just sort of this thing that I had seen at newsstands. I knew it was a comic, but it was very high up on that top shelf. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be looking at this. It seems a little weird, but I was always intrigued by it. And then I got these cards and I'm like, this is rad. So it led me to the movie. The movie led me to 2 places in town, a used bookstore called Dean's Half Price Books, which is still there, and Barnes & Noble, which was the only place at that time that carried heavy metal. It's always been a bit of a hard thing to find in comic shops, and we're hoping to change that for the future. But it was twofold. It was me going in there, finding the latest issue on the racks at Barnes & Noble, which at that time was pretty edgy stuff, and then going to Dean's to get some used. And it was, kind of nestled not too far from the porn section, it was kind of in a very specific part of the store. And it was just a wild thing. I had seen no comic like that. I grew up loving Batman and X-Men, the Phantom, the Shadow, Dick Tracy. So a lot of different spaces, but, very, very clean, normal American stuff. And heavy metal was eye-opening for me, and it's been an obsession for me ever since. So we're going on nearly 30 years of a serious problem that I've taken into my life.
Well, I'm glad you did. And Chris, how about you? I mean, was this when you were retailing, did you stock heavy metal on the shelves, or
yeah, of course. We totally had heavy metal on the shelves. possibly not at its best point in time. I discovered it when it was at its peak. So definitely I'm a sort of pre-millennium kind of guy. So pre 2000 is really my thing. I found heavy metal when I was 10 years old, thanks to a very wayward friend by the name of Michael Patrick Smith, who I've never been able to find again. And he has the most generic name in the world. So I've never been able to track him down and say thank you. But I always remember he was a year older than me, and he had a brother that was 2 or 3 years older than him, who, was the guy who read heavy metal, and he used to draw and was incredible. And two big things came of that. One was looking at the magazine and then seeing the artwork his brother would do. As a 10-year-old kid, I stopped drawing. I was like, I'll never be that good, which I think is tragic in hindsight, but it's what happened. But I still remember the immortal words my friend said to me, which was, have you ever seen Lone Sloan? Come around my house. We're going to read heavy metal and listen to Pink Floyd. And I'm just like, that's an origin story right there. And so we did, and I became obsessed with Philippe Douillet. And so that was my huge sort of interest and gateway. I loved Mobius. I loved Enki Bilal. I loved all of that sort of original stuff. And so after I finished in retail, I ended up at Titan Comics, where I launched the Static Press line of books, which was the European range, where we were able to house the Philippe Douillet library, the Enki Bilal library, and various other great things, which did lead to me getting to spend a day with Philippe in his Paris studio, just hanging out, matching him drink for drink, which certainly won me many points with him. And getting here, well, it's quite interesting. I'm here very much thanks to Dave and a fortuitous meeting between us in Angoulême a couple of years ago. But our shared love of heavy metal and its source material with Metal Hurlant is, was the bond for a friendship, and that has led us to this point, which is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, nearly 50 years after its inception, it's clearly still something potent and resonant with fans. Like, Dave, what would you say has sort of made this brand something that can stand the test of time?
Ooh, I think it's the subversive content. I think it's the European nature of it. It offers a very different thing to the American eyes. It kind of twists your mindset a little bit, and it's just enduring. When I first read heavy metal, I had no idea where this stuff was coming from. I knew that it was kind of European, but I didn't know who was making it. I had never heard of these creators. It was a pre-internet time. You couldn't just look this stuff up. So it was really mystical. I think that nature still perseveres a little bit, through the good years and through the bad. It's always been this kind of like forbidden object that only a special number of people get to experience. And we want it in the hands of as many as possible. But at the same time, you have to have a certain mindset for it. It's not for everybody, but we think everyone should take a chance on it, certainly. Especially our version.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the names of contributors over the years, there really is a who's who of not just comics, but pop culture and entertainment, legendary and royalty in there. So and then also clearly a lot of people have been inspired by the look, the feel, of the magazine. For those who maybe don't have as much gray hair as I do in my beard and haven't been around since the early days, or like what's the appeal, what's the entry point, what's the pitch to somebody that's like, oh well, this is a new number one, is this something I want to jump on? Like Chris, how would you sort of, if I mean, again, you're a former retailer, so you've probably made a million recommendations over the years to people walking through, but what's the pitch of the new number one, would you say?
I mean, really simply, it's a title where you've got a whole bunch of different stuff in there. You've got lots of different content, different creators, different styles, different approaches, different voices, but it's very much coming. It's risk-taking, it's edgy, it's not holding back, and it's offering something different to what you're actually finding on the stands these days. Even when I look at people that are saying they're offering that sort of thing, it's still very safe. It's still within that sort of usual pocket. And I think what we're wanting to do is recapture some of that magic of the really classic, the very early heavy metal, even down to having someone like Enki Bilal in there, who was in from, God, I think one of the first 10 issues when they started running Exterminator 17. So it's that thing of having its roots there, but also being very current. So you can see on Dave's background there's someone like Janevsky who's going to bring something new, this European pizzazz that you haven't seen before. And yet, when we walk around somewhere like Angoulême is commonplace. So I just think we're really trying to give people a little bit of the comfort food along with something new, and hopefully it all goes down very well, because for us as editors, it's going down very well.
Big project, a lot of moving pieces, it seems, Dave. And so like, I'm curious, like, what were some sort of must-haves for this first relaunch, and how did you go about saying, okay, we only got to get one shot to relaunch this once, so this, right out of the gate, this thing has to have what were some of the must-haves for you?
Well, I knew it had to have Janevsky, and I knew it had to have a good mix of new and old. So, Janevsky was a guy that I connected with a couple years ago. He'd been in my mind. Chris and I talked about some other projects along the way before we came to heavy metal, but thankfully we were able to bring him in. So we knew we had to have him. He kind of represents that underground mentality that still exists in Europe. And we also wanted some classic stuff. I think primarily we want to identify and reconnect with the old fans. So we wanted to have, and this was credit to Frank, actually. He brought this in, but Burton and Sib and the Mercenary in particular is incredible. So there was a lot of that legacy material, and we hope to have a lot of what and then some deep cuts that we're hoping to pull from, and maybe complete a few things that were left dangling. So it was a matter of knowing we had to look behind us to the history of the magazine, but continue to look forward. And that's where, some newer things will come in, like what Chris has brought, and then how we're going to revamp Tarna and all that. So we felt it needed to be a good mixture of what has come and what is to come.
So, April 1st, 1977, the first issue hits the newsstands. You fast forward to today. I mean, even the concept of newsstand and magazines, it seems like they've kind of had a rough run, especially, as newsstands have kind of changed and getting in, and distribution has had ups and downs. And obviously things are continuing to shake up throughout the greater comics industry. Like, what have been some of the ups and downs of the heavy metal brand over the years? And what's it take to have kept this thing going all these years?
Ooh, yeah, there's something persistent about heavy metal that no matter what it goes through, it always survives. And the past decade has been pretty rough, and this predates me and Chris. We don't want to name names or say too much. There's a lot we need to just keep a lid on, and we want to forget the past. We want to forget the past to a point. We want to look back and maybe ignore the past couple decades in as many ways as we can. But we feel like we've got a good team of people, front of house and behind the scenes, that really have the passion for the magazine. So it lost its way, just, I think, with bad management for a while, and I'll leave it at that.
Got it. But and like, how did you both sort of come on board to sort of take this in a new direction? Just curious, like, how did that come about?
Dave, I'll let you field this one.
All right, I'll start this one. So I submitted a pitch to heavy metal in 2020, and it got rejected, and I got really pissed off. So I felt that it would have been a good thing for the mag, but I didn't realize entirely what was going on behind the scenes. And it wasn't so much a reflection of the pitch, but it was a reflection of the turmoil. Yeah. So I took that, and I just kind of kept up with the things that were the movings around that were going on behind the scenes. And I got in touch with Marshall Lees, who is the current CEO. I call him Supreme Overlord. And ultimately it led to me getting a job. And Chris and I got the job at the same time, but I brought Chris in right at the end of just chatting. Marshall wanted to bring the magazine back. He had a handful of people that he knew he wanted to work with, one of whom was Frank. So Frank was already in the mix. Then I came in, and I was able to get Chris in, and we knew that, the three of us could do what Marshall wanted and help fulfill his vision while also fulfilling our vision. We were all very much on the same page. And I know Supreme Overlord has got, the right vision for the mag as well. We're lucky to be in this situation right now.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
And we mentioned Frank a couple times. Frank Forte, we're talking about. He's someone I've worked with for a while, and just seen him grow as a Kickstarter creator and crowdfunder. But he was supposed to be on this broadcast. Unfortunately, he's dealing with California wildfires and trying to save his house right now. So fingers crossed.
Priorities, yeah, it's makes sense.
That's a Frank. We'll get him on for some more nuts and bolts again on the crowdfunding front. But when you started putting together the concept of this relaunch, was crowdfunding front of mind for how to take this and launch the sort of new era of this?
I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely, I would say, like in the sense of when you were talking before, we don't really have those newsstands anymore. They exist, but it's not the same, and it's not as easy to get on, and certainly not to be seen. But if you think of Kickstarter as being one of many, potential modern day newsstands, it's very much that. It's where you can essentially see your project wrapped. It's there, and if it's doing well, it's a project we love. It's on the front page. And I've had the opportunity to take part in a number of Kickstarters with people, but certainly nothing this huge. Like,
Yeah.
As we were, starting this broadcast today, I saw it come up, and it was like the show is about tips and hints and things for people launching a Kickstarter. And I was like, well, the big thing of our success is if you can launch with an incredible brand name with 50 years of history, you're probably going to do really well. Sadly, that's not everyone's, benefit, but we were certainly very fortunate with that.
Yeah. And I know, and that comes with obviously benefits and as you said, also potentially some baggage if like the last couple of in recent times, it hasn't been hitting all the marks that the high points of it for publishing, but seem to be turning those, the strengths of the legacy market and all of that, and just rallying people around this new direction and this new vision, which is incredible to see. I mean, I'm curious, going in, 10,000 backers, over 700K raised, $5,000 goal. Did this exceed your expectations, or was this right, or was this the plan all along? This is exactly right where we thought we would be.
I'd like to say it was the plan all along, but I will say that we're all quite surprised. A lot of it has to do with the power of the brand, but I think it all has to do more so with what we put into it. And there were a lot of people involved, not just me and Chris. So, we had a lot of deep conversations about it, and, we had a direction, but you don't really know what's going to happen sometimes, especially launching at the end of the year and the holidays. And we felt that was the right time for us, but there were a lot of things against us as well. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen. And, here we are.
Yeah. And I know that the Metal Hurlant had a launch as well that also did extremely well. And there's, some people sort of play the, that we can't all win at once, but usually it seems like on crowdfunding, when the tide rises, it seems to help a lot of people. So that may have actually played to your advantage as well.
Yeah, competition is fine. It's good. There are a lot of anthologies out there right now. I mean, it's a funny time for the Tower Hurlant and for heavy metal to be returning to the periodical market. There's a lot of other stuff out there. So I think it's something that people want. It's a format that people have always struggled to embrace, but it comes, it ebbs and it flows. And I think right now we're at the right time again to bring this back. And there's something comforting about that format. I think it goes all the way back to Tales from the Crypt. A good number of people do enjoy it, but it has been a struggle to sell this on people. But for right now, we seem to be at the right moment. And, we wish Tower Hurlant the best of luck. That's fine. We're happy to go up against him.
Well, I think as well, comics can be so expensive that it costs so much to try something out, to find out if you like it. And so when you're trying an anthology title, you're actually getting multiple titles within that. You're getting to sample a lot of different things. And usually they do offer a little bit better bang for your buck than, say, a dedicated title might. So you end up with a higher page count for the money and a lot of options. So, if you can walk away and say, I like 50 or 60% of that, you've probably got your money back and you're doing well. And chances are, we're hoping that the percentages are going to be much higher than that.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the format and factor of this, because I know you guys have, it's magazine style, but you've leaned into some of the things that work on Kickstarter. You've you've got variant covers with stretch goals. You've expanded the page count of things. Like, what's the sort of form factor and final page count looking like it's going to be for this project, or are we still hammering that out?
We're looking at a pinch over 200. And I think, we promised the backers with the stretch goal that we get to 216. It could be that, could be a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but we're still putting a lot of the pieces together, and we've got an abundance of content, thankfully. So, we knew we wanted to have it look as classically heavy metal as possible. So we wanted it to be a little thicker than maybe it was more recently. It's going to have a lot of good stuff in it, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was obviously a cover strategy at play as well. So we wanted to make sure that, we unveiled a couple of the standard covers. So you've got your Hildebrandt one there, and you've got your Frazetta one, go with the classics. And then also the blank sketch cover, so people can create, what could be the future classic covers. After that, it was all about having these Kickstarter exclusives that were at different levels and reaching into different fandoms, different fan bases, and offering something special there that you couldn't get elsewhere. But on the flip side of that, we are also thinking about when we go into the direct market. And so we're soon going to be revealing our solicitations, where you'll see a couple of direct market only covers, and where that'll appeal more to the audiences there. So I think it is a case of knowing what is popular where, but also then divvying it up a bit and being able to go, well, yes, for Kickstarter, we're going to offer some unique things. But I mean, there was a lot there, down with the pin badges, the 3D figurines, all of that. It really, as you said, I think we had the right ticket for hitting the Kickstarter audience.
Yeah. Yep. And, doing it or offering it as a limited edition hardcover as well. Just a lot of options. Yeah. Because one of the things that I was going to, remark on, and obviously this is an advantage of economies of scale, but, the price point for what people are getting in terms of, you can't find another, I don't think you can find another 200 plus page comic on Kickstarter that starts at $15. So, coming out of the gate with a tremendous value play obviously contributed to the size and enthusiasm for this launch. I'm curious, like, was price point a challenge for you in terms of deciding, where to go, or was the goal always to sort of keep it nice and affordable and in alignment with maybe what it might cost at the comic shop when it comes out as well?
Chris, go for it. I wish Frank was here to chime in on this one, but Chris, you take it.
Yeah. It was heavily contested. I think Frank, in all loveliness, was very much thinking that we should keep it as affordable as possible for people, which we very much wanted to do. But I also looked at actually the European edition of the new Metal Long, and they were charging a premium price. You're looking at €20 for that. And I've been sort of happily picking up the first dozen issues of that. And so I was arguing for a slightly higher point. And I think where we arrived in the middle with $15 was about right. And, it did prove to be very interesting in terms of people's response to that. I think that's a sweet spot for people. When you think that, there's some oversized Marvel comics, and I use oversized very loosely, for $10 now, and they have been for a while. Yeah, as you say, this is a bargain. I think that's part of the reason people came, but I do think people saw what we're offering and what we're actually trying to do here. So I think regardless of that, I think the audience would have come. I think that the barrier to entry was the quality of material and making sure that was right. The price point was secondary to that, but certainly I think we've made a win for everyone.
Yeah. So in terms of the material for this specific issue, how, because Dave mentioned that, back in 2020, he's pitching heavy metal. So are you guys still like sitting on submission pile stuff or are you going out and reaching out and trying to solicit content for this? Is it a hybrid? And going forward, I'm sure there's a lot of people, creators that obviously listen to this show and maybe grew up on heavy metal as well. Where, where are you going to be filling content for future launches and future issues? And what should people know about potentially what heavy metal is looking for and what heavy metal is going to offer going forward?
This is a sticky question. Yeah, I would say that my approach, and I believe Chris is on the same page with me here, is that it's very much a curated process.
Yeah.
Don't call us, we'll call you. We had a lot of people that we knew we wanted to work with. We knew would be a good fit for our vision. So I would say at the moment, submissions really aren't open, but we love seeing work. And I know there's been a lot of interactivity on the Discord, other social media platforms. We do like to see what people are up to, but really, we owe it to the overlords, we owe it to the fans to keep the standards as high as possible. And we really want good stuff in there. And, heavy metal is not necessarily where you start, it's where you should end up. So, we're being very specific for right now to really start as high, set the bar as high as possible.
Yeah, that's kind of the watchword, is curation. It's exactly right. It's a curated mag, and we did come in with a lot of stuff that we wanted. And really, we're sort of looking at having most of the entire first year pretty much laid out and set out. And considering it's a quarterly mag, we're kind of not talking, about anything really new until the second year, I would say. I mean, there's new stuff in this one, some very exciting new stuff, as well as cool stuff like, when I was at Titan, I wanted to adapt Inky Bilal's Bug into English. It hadn't been translated before, and I was fighting to get it done, and we didn't. And so with heavy metal, we're able to do that. We've discovered some interesting new stuff from Europe as well, including Genevsky. So yeah, there's a melting pot of stuff. So we're not really dipping back into the past submissions pile. I kind of feel that's not fair to anybody, really, in a way. That's my personal opinion. We're still open to hearing from people, but as long as they have realistic expectations and understand what we're trying to do, especially at the beginning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and gives you some control over just keeping that bar high and the vision intact. So I'm curious, this is a big fulfillment project, and I know, obviously heavy metal's been around for a long time. You've ideally, plenty of these books have been shipped out, but I'm just curious, like, has there been a direct fulfillment project close to this size that you guys have been a part of, and are there things that you're putting in place to make sure that you can knock this out of the park, so that a quarterly schedule is something that you can feel really good about rolling forward with? Because when I can see a big gulp moment where it's like, yay, 10,000 backers, gulp, 10,000 backers.
Yeah, for sure. Mo backers, mo problems, but I think we've got a good handle on it. We've talked a lot about the logistics and the fulfillment. So yeah, it's challenging and a bit intimidating, but I feel good about it.
And is the plan going forward, if the goal is 4 issues a year, is that 4 Kickstarter launches each year?
Not for that, no.
Okay. So we're sort of using the crowdfunding to really galvanize the initial relaunch, but I'm taking it direct market is going to be the primary release vehicle going post this. Is that the plan?
Yeah. For the magazine, yes. It didn't feel right to be either offering a subscription, through Kickstarter, and that certainly, as you're saying now, fulfillment-wise, with closer to 11,000 backers now would be quite insane. But to actually launch issue 1 with the fanfare it deserved, this seemed like the right way to do it, and then it'll be available at retail and via the heavy metal website directly, so people can get on board. And I'm hoping that issue 1 will entice people to do that.
Well, yeah, and it's giving, I'm sure, a meaty read that definitely not a one sitting experience too. So it seems like people will be able to jump in and get a lot out of it, and hopefully find something that they're, they can really connect with, and launch just, in good way as you roll toward the 50th anniversary. Yeah, I guess any other projects or other things that you guys are excited about that you're working on in the background, or is this kind of the main keeping the main thing right now?
I live, sleep, breathe, eat, and dream heavy metal. This is it right now. Yep.
Well, that's
Yeah, I mean, this is the main event, and it's more exciting just the little stuff we're doing within it, because each of us is looking after our own different titles and aspects of the magazine. So bringing them all together, bringing them in, workshopping them. There's some stuff where we're working with people on original IP that God, I just said the dreaded expression, IP, original story ideas, original concepts, original things. And it's super exciting watching character sketches come in for things that we haven't even talked about yet. Because as much as we unveiled a whole bunch of our sort of issue one content, there's actually another announcement coming in about a week or two where we'll be unveiling more and pretty much laying out what's going to be in issue one. And we're very excited about that. There's also all the heavy metal film stuff that we're doing. So, as Dave mentioned before, he and I are co-editing the Tana strip, which is going to be an ongoing, essentially, I would say, definitive Tana, in as much as we can beyond the film. And so we have a great team there with John Reppian and Leah Moore on the writing, with Anna Morozova on art, Ellie Wright on colors, and remind me the letters, Dave, because you've done this.
Oh, we're actually locked in a letterer yet, but it's going to be one of two of my guys. So I'll hold off on that because I don't want that to get jumbled up yet.
Well, there we go. But it's exciting to be, certainly bringing that stuff to a new audience. And I think we spoke before about sort of the classic guys and readers and reaching back into that audience that loved heavy metal at its core. But I think what you're finding as well is with new readers, with younger generations, they're actually really interested in this classic stuff. They're interested in what was cool, whether it be the music, whether it be classic film, and understanding that. And I think the same comes to comics, to literature, to bande dessinée. So really, it's not so much exclusively made for the old people. It's about just putting out good comics that we feel like every age group will respond to. And for some people, it'll be a revelation because it's their first time seeing that sort of material. And to me, that is super exciting. I don't think you need to pander to any particular crowd, but I think if you're putting out good comics, then people will come. It's Field of Dreams material there.
Yeah, definitely. And just looking through the archives of all the past things, like just the imagery, the iconography, the history is pretty impressive. And it's it reminds me of a couple decades ago. I think at this point now it's getting up there, but I did a 24-hour comic challenge at a comic book shop, and definitely relied on around hour 18 on my third or fourth Red Bull. Just like, gotta look around. Oh, yeah, something from heavy metal will inspire me. We'll work this into my Madcap comic that is still working on. So it's great how that influence continues to pay dividends down the line. While I have you both here, we have a lot of creators that listen to this show, and for many, anthology projects are something that they either want to that many aspire to create. And I'm wondering if you have maybe one editorial or anthology project, but it could be anything from the creative to the project management side, but tip for creators that are like, all right, yeah, I'm going to launch the next great comic anthology. What does anything come to mind for either of you, Dave or Chris?
Well, I think my rule for that is my rule for everything. Hire a letterer. Don't do everything yourself. Teamwork is important. I think it's good. Comics is a very collaborative format, so I think it's good to embrace the people around you and to have names involved. Don't hold it all to yourself. Look and see who can help you, either running the campaign or creating the comic, whatever it is. And challenge yourself to write short stories. 8 pages is a great thing to aspire to. It'd be great to write the perfect 1-page short story. It's been done in some cases, but I think it's good to think small while dreaming big.
I guess, again, coming down to curation. So presumably, if someone's wanting to approach an anthology, you probably don't want to do it by yourself. You don't just want this singular voice, because actually that's all that's going to come through in the stories. So you're going to need to collaborate. As Dave said, collaboration is key. And so then you really want to curate it. So as much as it's lovely to throw your friends a bone, and certainly do try and do that, always look beyond your circle of friends. Look for people who share your interests, who are doing things that you think are cool, that you like. You know, even if it is looking at people overseas, like maybe, you know, they could be looking at people and working with someone where they're translating something, or helping them to deliver their story in English. And, you know, there can be a mutual exchange there. I think just that looking beyond your usual group or outlook is key.
Yeah, it's really amazing how global the talent pool is right now, and getting exposed to stuff from all over the world, and artists that you never seen before. That is one of the beauties of the anthology, is that, you know, you're gonna get exposed to some new stuff, and who knows, you may find your next favorite creator. Well, the project is Heavy Metal Magazine #1. There are in late pledges that are still available, so please go ahead and grab yours if you can. Chris, Dave, thank you so much for spending some time with me today in the Comics Launch audience. Congrats on the successful relaunch, and excited to see more from you on the shelves going forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Good to connect again.